Father, and the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. Today is the Sunday before Lent, and today we prepare ourselves to begin the Lent season. I want to give you this thought to go and to think about it today, maybe spend time with it. Sometimes we think our life as a streamline, a steady line. And the surprise is when you think about it a little bit, our life is not a streamline. You go from one point to another. That's how we think. Sometimes we go in the direction that we don't want to go. Sometimes we go in a direction that's exciting and we want to go. But if you think about it, our life is not a streamline. It is points or cycles. I'll give you an example of what I mean by points or cycles. You depend on in your life on your heart. Think about it. Your heart has to beat for you to be alive. Is your heart a steady bump? It's like an electric pump that just pumps blood streamline like that. Or it is a beat and then it relaxes. You check your pulse, the blood in the arteries extend the arteries, and then it relaxes. So at any point of time, your brain receives good nutrition and oxygen, and then for a second later, what? It's not there. It's waiting for the next beat. You're breathing the same way. You're actually living from one point to another. And if the other point does not come, what happens? It's done. This is our life. Our life actually from beginning to end is points and cycles. It's not a streamline. And then you think about it, nature is the same way. When God created everything, He created cycles. You got winter, where everything, and especially in a country like this, in the north, winter actually kills everything. Everything's dormant. No grass is living, no fruitful trees, nothing, just snow. And then come the spring, and then the summer, what happens? You got life. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. So like our spiritual life, there is no steady stream in the spiritual life. If you expect to have a steady stream, you're dreaming. This is not our life on earth. There's ups and downs. And today we begin a point in our cycle that's a fruitful point where there is sowing and harvesting. There is life. There is nutrition. It's a springtime. It's a springtime. So we begin from tomorrow engaging in spiritual work. When the farmers see the frost is gone, they wake up in the morning and there is no frost on the ground. I lived in Iowa. They tell you this is the beginning of our work. In the culture, in the agricultural areas, the farmers work in desk work in the summer, in the winter. They work inside the houses. They don't do anything in the fields. Well, once the frost is gone, what do? They begin their work in the fields. Life is coming back. Let us work with life. And in the church, we have the same thing. It's not natural to think our spiritual life is just going like this, straight line. It goes up and down. And when it's up, you have to work. Because when it is down, you're going to have to harvest and live by what you have harvested in the uptime. So this is, imagine a farmer when the springtime and the summertime does not do anything. What happens in the winter? They will starve. They will starve. So if you want to be wise and to be someone who knows the times and the seasons, like Jesus said. He said that to the Pharisees. He said to the Pharisees, you know how to discern the face of the sky. You say, when it's cloudy and the sky is red, we know it's winter. When it's clear and sunny and shiny, you say, summer is coming. but you don't know how to discern your heart seasons. So Lent is a heart season, and Jesus is saying to us today, is the message is, this is what you need to work, what kind of work we're going to do with the season of Lent. He said, simple. You love God, you do three things, and you do them sincerely for Him. Imagine a farmer going to the farm and running his combine or the plow, the electric plow or the gas plow, and he's not hitting the ground. It's running. Okay, everybody looks at him, he's saying he's doing something, but he's actually not working on the ground. That's bad. That's waste of time. So he's saying, you want to fast for God. You want to pray for God. You want to give for God. And do it when you don't expect anything from anyone. Because that's true work, you're hitting the ground. So it is the season, and it is a good season, and it's a living season of life, and it's a spring for spiritual life. And I think we need to plan it today, how we're going to do that, and prepare our hearts. Talks about the secret places always. Secret places, meaning this dark area of our heart, the place where nobody sees anything. When it seems like you're working in vain, when no one is going to tell you, bravo, good for you. No parent, no priest, no friend, no husband, no wife, no one. You're not getting anything for it except from one person that you care about, and that person is real to you. If God is real, we'll do it. If God is not real, then standing and praying is schizophrenia. Giving is a loss of money that has no purpose. And fasting is a diet that is very destructive. So if we believe God exists and He's real and we have a relationship with Him, then the three actions that are required of us is fasting, praying, and giving. And I think they match the commandment to love God. God said the commandment to love God, the greatest commandment says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind or soul, with all your power, your might. So I can think of it this way. Giving is loving God from the heart, because where your treasure is, there will be your heart also. Praying is loving God from the mind, because you're not just making words. You have thought behind those words. You think about it before you say it. And then the fasting is giving God of your own energy, your power. You know, in the old times, this is a very vivid image. It doesn't leave my mind. They used to, no one ate the fat of the animals. You know, we like the fat. We like to cook with fat, lard and stuff. Fat is what's satisfying. God said, bring it to me. It has to be burned on the altar, and they keep the altar burning all the time with that fat. What does it mean? To burn the fat for God is to give God your energy, your power. You offer it as a sacrifice. So fasting is the way. When you abstain from that fat, when you abstain from being satisfied with meat and fish and the rest of it, you're actually offering to God your power, your energy, and you're going to feel it. When you offer God your energy, would you feel? When you offer God energy, what would you feel like? Powerful? If you offer God power, what would you feel like? Spiritually, but physically, weak. Weak. You say, oh, been fasting after 3 weeks or 4 weeks of fasting, you say, I feel weak. Where is that power gone? Oh, you loved God with all your power. That's exactly it. And when you offer God money, what should you feel like? Don't have to feel poor, but you would feel poorer. Poorer. You're not as rich. When you offer God your heart, what would you feel? I would feel dry. A little dry. So you're going through dryness, weakness, and a little poverty. What is that? That is loving God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your power. Jesus on the cross. Jesus on the cross. Today I want to give some time to a person that we all love, and it's important that we share his memory as we remember his departure. He's our father and a dear saint to all of us. And I know that all of you know the story that I'm going to say, but the kids don't. And those who are English speaking maybe don't. Very little is heard about Pope Kyrillos outside Egypt. And outside, actually now, more in Syria and Iraq and Lebanon. And he is a person that embodied the love of God with all the heart, with all the mind, with all the might. His life was a strange life to those who lived in his time. He was weird, as the other people described him. Was a little bit weird, different. And he did things that people wouldn't do in his place. So Pope Kyrillos was a young man, lived in, I think, around Damanhur. His parents were middle-class people. Manufia, was he? They grew up, okay. Manufia, it's, I think it's Tuchel Nasara. Yeah, I see. So the Synaxarium had a mistake. So he lived in Tuchel Nasara, that's true. You know, when those of you who knows, he used to joke with people. They come to him and say, "Sayyidna, ana min Tuchel Nasara." Can you لهم إيه? أهل طوخ لطوخ. He used to joke about it. This is like, it rhymes in Arabic and has a meaning. It doesn't mean good, but he was trying to avoid that anybody will feel close to him by being of his own town. So he was a young man who grew up and was very dedicated to the church. He used to be visited by monks. His family used to host a monk from Deir Baramus, Abu Natadrus al-Baramusi. And the monk used to come, and he would take Azar, the boy, and says, when he was a little boy, he said, this one belongs to us. The monk made a prophecy about him. So he grew up to love the church and love the Bible. And there's lots of story about him when he was young. He actually had, one of the stories says he had a Muslim sheikh who was a blind man, and the sheikh and Azar together memorized the Gospel of St. John, believe it or not. When he grew, he was employed as a clerk in a shipping company in Alexandria. And there, he was a very honest man, and they loved him. And the company owner wanted to make him like a manager, a big administration job. And he said, no, I'm not interested. I have decided to let go and go to the monastery. And the man felt bad and kept enticing him with more money, and he refused. So he, against the will of his parents and the advice of his friends, he went to the monastery of St. Mary el-Baramus, and there he started his monastic life with a very pious spiritual man from el-Baramus who was his spiritual guide. And then at the time, they used to send monks to a seminary to learn and be educated, the holy books. And he went and became a seminarian in Helwan in Cairo and spent some time there and was very much loved by everybody. And he was excellent in his studies, was one of the best students. Went back to the monastery, and he decided in a few years to become a hermit. And the monks said, too early, can't have you as a hermit now. You know, usually people are sent to be hermits, to be alone by themselves after maybe 10, 15 years at least. And he is too young to do that. The monks were afraid. People who go to be hermits, if they're not ready, they go crazy. They develop very big problems psychologically. And they break it and they come back. So his spiritual father, said he will do it. He can do it. So he went and spent time in his cave. He had a cave maybe an hour away by foot from the monastery. How do you do caves in these times? Pope Shenouda had one too. You find the rock and you start carving a niche in the rock enough to sleep you. So he had and this is the cave he had in Deir el-Baramus. So you go into this rock and he starts carving his cave, and he lived there for a long time. I don't remember how many years he spent in it. And every time every week on Saturday Eve, he would come to pray with the monks, the Vespers, the Psalmody, and then also spend the morning praying the liturgy. He collects some food from the monastery, take care of some service. He used to serve as much as he could in that time, maybe wash some clothes for the older monks, and then he'd go back to his cave the same day on Sunday. He lived there for a while until something happened in the monastery, that there were a division. The monastery had a big conflict, and there were monks, and he felt, his name was Abuna Mina, he felt that they were treated unfairly, and these monks were kicked out of the monastery, which is interesting. To me, this is one of the most interesting things that you would think about St. Pope Carolus doing. He was called Abuna Mina because he loved St. Mina the Miraculous. This was his favorite saint. He used to have a very, very strong relationship with St. Mina. When these monks left the monastery, he left with them. He left with them. It's crazy to think about. Monks, once they go into the monastery, they become fish in a tank. They tell you, we cannot leave. There is no way. You can entice them to be bishops, you entice them to go and be servants in Canada or States or Australia. They would refuse vehemently. And if they go for a little bit, they come back because they don't want to leave the monastery. But he felt that the monastery had treated these monks harshly, so he left with them. And at that time, he went to Old Cairo. He stayed there for a little bit. When Pope Ioannis heard of it, he sent him to the monastery of St. Samuel to restore it. He worked very hard in that monastery and restored it and made a new church at the time of Amba Athanasius, the bishop there. His heart was always in the church, always, although he was a hermit. And he really didn't have to do anything. If you think about it from a person's point of view, you're free. You're a hermit. You don't need anyone. He says, yes, but I love the church. And wherever the church needed help, he would go and do. When he came back, they wanted to make him a bishop. Pope Ioannis said, we'll make him a bishop. He ran, completely fled to St. Shenouda Monastery in Sohag, where those times it's very difficult to reach any monastery. Can't find them. And after a while, he came back after everything settled down and stayed. He wanted to find a place that nobody would go to, some place that people would not really be interested in visiting. So he found this windmill. This is now, it has a church around it, but was not that way. It was in the middle of nowhere, on top of the mountain. And there's another picture of it when it had no church built around it. Here it is. That's what he lived in. This little round building, it's a deserted windmill owned by the Ministry of Antiquity, Wizart al-Asar. And they didn't care about it, so he went and asked the official to give him this for a rental by year. I don't know, give him some money for it every year. And he lived there for many years. And they used to give him, he used to get water from a far place because it's on top of a mountain. And every day or two they will bring him water, or he will go down and bring water. And they say at one point, thieves mugged him, attacked this thing, and they hit his head and he was unconscious. And he dragged himself down this mountain to the hospital, Mabarra. And the emergency room physicians were very surprised to see somebody with his head bleeding and who was unconscious to come to them and be treated. So we went back. From those days, Abuna Rufa'id tells us about a man who used to help him, a deacon. A deacon was not really completely with it, like has some mental challenges. And the deacon sometimes would stop Abuna Mina and says, Abuna, you interrupted my response in the middle of the liturgy. Abuna, you interrupted my response. And he says, Abuna usually said, and the man said later, Abu Namina would say, sorry son, I didn't mean to. He was just in prayer. After a long time, he started to have miracles happening in those days. Then he thought about building a church for St. Mina in Old Cairo. And that church now is the place where he had many disciples. Can we close the door, please? Close the door. He had many disciples in that. Now most of them became bishops later. And they used to come and take his advice, spiritual advice, as a guide. And from there, he was elected to be the Pope of Alexandria. He was a priest for 36 years, priest and bishop, of course. And one thing he did, that he did all his life, he prayed tasbihah every day, every night, wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, pray tasbihah as a monk would do, and as a hermit he did it, and then pray a liturgy and end his day with a liturgy, end his night with a liturgy. And he did this every single day of his life. So if you think about it, he lived as a priest, and a priest and a bishop, 36 years, and he multiplied that by 365, say 360, if he's will, and you end up more than 12,000 liturgies in his life, 12,000. Many things he did as a bishop and as a priest. Miracles, he casted demons. I remember one story said by Abu Yusuf Asad one day. Abu Yusuf Asad was trying to cast a demon from a girl, and the demon didn't want to come out. Very stubborn. So Abu Yusuf said, I can't do anything with it. Take it to Sayyidina. Take this girl to Sayyidina. And Sayyidina was living in Azbakiyya, the cathedral, the old cathedral. So he was sitting on his seat like this, asleep. It was like in the afternoon. He was sitting on the seat and falling asleep and maybe snoring. And the girl was brought as they entered. Kibu خليه مقفول دكتور من فضلك. دكتور خليه مقفول please. خليه مقفول yes. They brought the girl, and they said as they brought the girl into the church, the cathedral, the demon started to scream. Sayyidina was asleep, didn't even wake up. Started to scream and came out with Sayyidina asleep. So they said this, and Abu Yusuf Asad remembered this one. There's a friend of mine, when he was a pope, his mother told me this personally. She said she had a sister who had an engagement that was very difficult, and they didn't know if to go on and to get married or not. So she said, I'm going to go ask Pope Carlos. People used to go and visit him in his church in the cathedral, of the old cathedral, standing in lines. It was a Saturday. The company she worked in had work on Saturday, and she should be working. But she snuck out of her job to ask Sayyidina, should we continue with this or not? And as she was standing in line, she said, I will never forget this. I was terrified, big time. Sayyidina stood up from his seat, walked all the way to where she was standing, and looked her at the eyes and said, did it have to be on a working day? So she got terrified and ran out of the church. She didn't ask the question. Right. So he had all that happens, and I listened to many stories like this from many people who had a personal encounter with Pope Carlos. He was a very loving person, a fatherly figure, very holy, and it's prayer. That, if you can summarize him in one word, it is life of prayer. He gave his life totally to be in intimate prayer with God. He also, in his time, we have the putting the foundation stone for St. Mark Cathedral, the new one. And he didn't enjoy it much. It was finished in the time of Pope Shenouda. But he took with him on that day, he received the head of St. Mark, and he put St. Mark, it was a very glorious days. He put St. Mark down in a crypt shrine, where they built the cathedral on top of it. It was very fitting that St. Mark's head will be under the big cathedral of the... They brought it from Venice, right?
The relics from
Yeah.
Venice.
And then it was relics, not the head, true. They, in his time also in 68, St. Mary appeared. And one of the most significant things about the appearance of St. Mary was the only one documented in history that's seen by everybody. And the pictures of that, and the President, Gamal Abdel Nasser, so, yeah. Yeah, and this is the apparition of St. Mary. And this you would find in the archives of Washington Post and New York Times. Al-Ahram, that's true, our own, the Egyptian newspaper, the Muslim newspaper, seen by millions. It's unheard of. In the Catholic Church, there's many apparitions. Lourdes, Fatima, Guadalupe, they're all personal visions. The maximum number of people saw St. Mary in Fatima is 3 kids, compared to an apparition of St. Mary to millions. And this was in his time in 68, 2nd of April, 68, and she continued to appear every single day for 2 years. Anyone who wants us to see her will go and see her. This was in the times of Pope Kyrillos VI. There's a lot of personal stories. If you're interested, you can go on the YouTube and you would hear it in English and in Arabic. Pope Kyrillos is a great intercessor. He died in 71. He died in 71, and he died in his cell after being sick for a little bit. In his cell, it was a very simple cell, one room. He lived in on a very simple bed, and when he couldn't go to church anymore to attend Tasbihah and the liturgy, they put a speaker. Those times speakers were available. So they put a speaker in his room so he can actually attend by hearing, and whoever is praying over the liturgy, they will bring communion to him because he couldn't stand up and go to church. And he died there, and he said before he died, the Lord would take care of you. And he's leaving the whole church to the Lord to take care of. He's a great intercessor. I think many people interceded with him, especially I hear people from Syria and Iraq and Lebanon who are very fond of Pope Kyrillos. They love him to death. And they know him not through the story, they heard the story, but through the personal miracles that happened to them by his intercession. He's a very powerful intercessor, especially to his people. He still cares. I personally have stories with Pope Kyrillos, so I want you to try, and if you are in a tough spot, to intercede with Pope Kyrillos in addition to St. Mary. And because he had friendship with St. Mina the Miraculous, I think he has much more power than you and I can think. This is the story of Pope Kyrillos. We're celebrating him by a Vespers on Monday, tomorrow, at 7. And we're going to do the Tamgid and the procession with the icon. And also, we will do a liturgy on Tuesday morning from 9 to 11. Pope Kyrillos was canonized a saint in 2013. He is now officially a saint of the Church. And we are very excited because he is in our times. He's not an old saint from the time of the Romans. He's now. And he, to me, represents a person to follow if you want to grow intimacy with God. He practiced fasting and prayer. He practiced fasting, prayer, and giving, big time. He used to eat many days, not only during the Lent. At sunset, he would eat du'a. What's du'a? A little salt, a little cumin, and that's it. Maybe sesame, and dry bread, and water. That's it. Nothing fancy. And that's all what he used to do in many, many days, not only in the fast time. I remember also he liked Turkish coffee, and he would drink a little cup like this in the morning. They say that's what he used to do. That's the only thing he had outside after the liturgy, outside of the normal food that people would eat. We ask his intercession, and to the Lord our God, the glory, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, now and forever. Amen.